Hello and welcome back to Geek and Speak, the Geek and Seek podcast. Today, we are going to be highlighting some cards that we really like, but for one reason or another, don't play much, if at all. Today, I am joined by Preston. Preston, how's it going?
Going pretty good. Excited to discuss today's topic.
Heck yeah. And then I also have my friend Jason with me. How's it going, Jason?
Doing all right. It's pretty gloomy outside right now, but, you know, having a good Friday.
Yeah, it's a gloomy Friday. And hi, I'm your host, Morgan. I'm also having a weird Friday. The weather's definitely not helping, but I have a thing processing for Commander Clash right now, and it's literally taken like 5 hours and it's not done. So my workday has been quite uneventful and I've been quite bored. But that's why I'm happy to be here with my friends to talk about Magic cards that we wish we were playing. So if you would like to support the podcast or our gameplay or anything else we are doing here at Geek and Seek, I have this green screen behind me because I am doing an arena gameplay right now. You can support us over at patreon.com/Geek and Seek YouTube. And if you can't support us financially, that's okay. You can help us out a lot by just liking, subscribing, leaving comments. Leaving comments is actually the best thing you can do for us for the algorithm. Just give us feedback on our videos, contribute to the conversation, helps out a lot. And then check out some of our other videos. We have a lot of other videos. You could spend days watching all of our content. So, and then let's go ahead and talk about my favorite comment from this week. We actually had two. We had two comments I really liked. So we had one from, I can't read this from that far away, but he says, I know EDH content / algorithm is rough on YouTube. However, I love your guys' channel. Keep up the good gameplay and content. We appreciate it. This was on the newest episode of Upkeep, which came out a day late. Just with my new job, it's a lot harder for me to keep up with Upkeep these days with editing. So, when I see comments like that, it makes me feel better about doing it still. And then this other one is from the same video. Tommy playing solitaire while Jason draws his tokens, which is also pretty good. We've joked about whenever we get a merch store going, we should have a token pack that's just some of the doodles Jason has done on the show.
If the people would pay for them, then I would happily draw every single one.
Every single token, like ever?
I
Even
would.
like the
No, what I'm saying is every token that like we would need. However, I would draw every single one individually. Like if we got 500 tokens ordered, I would draw 500 tokens. I would do it. I would do it for the people.
Jason, they make printers now. You can just draw one and we can copy them.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
Alrighty. And for
Oh
news
wait,
today,
hey, wait. If we did that, then they could be serialized tokens. One
that's a
of
good
500.
point. One of one.
There
Yeah,
you go.
All right, calm down, wizards.
Speaking of Wizards, the only thing on news I wanted to really hit on today is that yesterday, for when this video is coming out, so a few days from when we're actually recording it, we're getting previews starting for Outlaws at Thunder Junction. And that is coming out April 19th, I believe. And it's the old Western set with all the villains from across the multiverse. Have you guys seen any of the early previews? What do you think about this set?
Oko looks nuts.
He has a cowboy hat on, which is pretty cool.
I've
I don't
seen
know
a
how
couple
good he is,
previews so
but
far. I think they look pretty interesting. A lot of people have been kind of negative on the set theme, which I don't understand. I think it seems kind of fun. Excited to see what all comes out of it.
I haven't seen so much negativity, so much I've seen people just memeing committing a crime. Like
everything is committing a crime now.
oh
The new mechanic.
dude,
Yeah.
if I target you to draw a card with Kenrith, Morgan, I've just committed a crime.
Or the card Secret Rendezvous is now a crime.
Yeah, right. You and another opponent, like you're drawing somebody else's cards. It's literally just helping them out. It's a crime. Socialism is not allowed.
I just think it's funny that like Commander players already cry and complain about literally everything. And now we're actually calling the mechanic committing a crime. Like we're just fueling their fire.
Right?
So
Right, like even the game says that it's bad because you're committing a
Yeah.
crime. Like,
yeah.
all right. I guess. That's just funny to me that even like you could even do good things. It's like nope.
I
It's
don't know.
almost like it's like giving away water bottles in the park, and then somebody calls the cops on you. Is like, did you have a permit to give away those water bottles? Did you? Did you?
How dare you be a good citizen? Yeah, I don't know. I think it could be okay. I do like the couple designs that we've got to see so far, but I also am kind of mixed about the setting. I thought that an old Western theme might be kind of fun, but it does kind of look a little goofy. But I'm not gonna really judge that too harshly until we see more of the set.
Yeah,
So
like the what are they? The alt art, like the wanted poster, like those. I'm not a fan. I just think they look goofy.
yeah. Well, and that's kind of how One Piece does their showcases too. So it kind of just feels like it's ripping off One Piece.
I mean, I get it. You know, it's old west, and you know, putting things on wanted posters. I mean,
Hmm.
I get
Yeah.
it. I suppose
It's
it looks they look goofy. They look goofy.
yeah. Yep.
Watch it have like the best card of any set that comes out this entire year.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. Like maybe if some of the we'll do it like we did last year, our favorite cards of the year. Maybe we'll do that this year, and it'd be fun to see if some of those cards pop up. But if you guys want to hear our overall opinions of the set, I don't think we're going to cover previews too much. Just we're just letting you know that that's coming. But on April 17th, so episode 44 of our podcast, we will be talking about our favorite cards from the set. So make sure you're subscribed. You tune in for that when that comes around. All right. Let's go ahead and get into our main topic today. These are each of us are going to be talking about our three favorite cards that we don't play much, if at all, for whatever reason. Preston, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about your first card on the list?
All right, so my first card is an uncard, so that's a big reason why I don't play it. But it's Urza Academy Headmaster. It's one of each color for a 4 loyalty planeswalker, and then all of his abilities have you go to askurza.com, and you either do a +1, a -1, or a -6. And I think they're all taken from other older planeswalkers, if I remember correctly. I think they were
Hmm.
all, yeah. So I have a fondness for this card because me and Morgan did like a 2-person draft of that unset back when it was coming out, and I won using that card. But obviously, it's an uncard, so it's not like I can just throw him in a deck willy-nilly. I'd have to do a real zero with people first. He's 5 color, and I've always kind of wanted to do a 5 color Planeswalker deck led by Urza. I think that would be fun, but that would be a very expensive deck to build with probably not super great outcomes because it would be mostly just Planeswalkers, which aren't the best in Commander, but I do want to do it someday.
I actually went to the website recently to see if this was even still up. It is. And they must have had another card that did something similar in the most recent unset because now there's two different cards you can click on. It's not just Urza Academy Headmaster.
Oh,
There must have been some other card that did something like this that now uses the same site or it like redirects you to that site or something. But yeah,
I'm
it's plus minus abilities are from previous planeswalkers and it's just randomized.
I'm looking at it right now. It's Urza's Funhouse. It's a land, and it says enter the Funhouse, and you click on it, and you get something random.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
huh,
yeah.
makes sense.
Let's see what happens if I alt Urza. You control target player during that player's next turn.
Got him.
That's a good
Minesweeper.
one.
Oh my god.
Preston's serious. I mean, we did an unstable, excuse me, draft when it came out, and we played. I can't remember if I think we did 3 of 5,
I
and
think so. Yeah.
the 3 games that Preston won all came down to Urza. Like we went to the 5th game. I won the first 2. He didn't have Urza, and then he won the next 3 games because he did have Urza. Like the game does kind of just morph around. I can't control what the heck is about to happen. And so, oh well, the game's over, I guess. So it is actually, it's goofy, but it actually does play quite powerfully. Um, and Preston's right. Like, yeah, you could rule zero this, and planeswalkers really aren't that good in Commander, but it is a lot better than it looks. All right, Jason, why don't you walk us through your first card that you like but don't really play?
All right, so what I chose for my number three spot was Opposition Agent. Um, when this card first came out, I was a big fan of it. I didn't play it a whole lot just because it was kind of expensive when it first dropped, and I didn't pull it and anything, so I just didn't run it. But it's got a powerful ability. But then you know as time has gone on, and especially right when it first dropped, I was kind of keeping an eye out for these situations. When are my opponents searching their libraries? Um, Outside of land ramping, unless you're playing in a like with people that usually run whatever tutor they can, it's not very often, and it's usually just for lands. So I found that Opposition Agent just doesn't do what you want it to do as much. And even when, especially in Commander, when you're in a situation where you want to be controlling someone when they're searching, you don't have it in your hand. So
That's true.
I I like it. I just don't. I don't think that it's necessarily an auto include into like every single mono black deck. It just your opponents don't search as often as you might think they do. I mean, reading the card initially, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many times where people would be searching their libraries, but they don't do it as often as you might think. Also, initially, I thought about it, and I didn't want to play it because I didn't want it to be like a feel bad. I don't always like playing the feel bad cards. That's not what I want to do to my opponents. I mean, I used to have a Talrand counter spells deck, and that was kind of the theme of that deck was I don't want you to have fun playing. Um, but I don't like to play cards like this a whole lot, so it just was something I kind of avoided. But then as time has gone on, I'm like, you know what? I don't think it's as useful.
I definitely think it just depends on the play group. Like our play group specifically is if some like people are either land tutoring, which stealing that is fine. It's probably not going to help you as much as it's just going to annoy people. And whenever we do have someone tutoring their decks for stuff that's not land, it's usually so specific that it doesn't really help you to steal it
Yeah.
because you don't have the setup to actually do anything with it. So you're just taking away their thing without actually advancing your own game plan really in our play group. But I assume in higher power play groups, this card gets a lot better and a lot more worthwhile.
I mean, the only real argument I have for it, as far as like what you're talking in that situation, is it does exile whatever card you find. So it's not like they get it back in their library or something if you don't cast it. Like it
Right.
is gone, but just
Yeah.
it just the utility isn't as versatile, I guess, as you would hope that it would be. Like, it's one of those ceiling is really high cards because you could potentially get the best card out of somebody else's deck. But it's also the floor. It's just not worth it for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Preston. I think it's very meta dependent. I only have this in two of my decks. I have it in my CEDH deck and I have it in my humans deck. I really probably don't even need it in my humans deck if I'm being honest. It really kind of, it's really funny if people are playing fetch lands because they wasted their land drop on a fetch land, they crack it, and now they don't even get anything because you're just getting the land that they were going to tutor for. That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
You just hate out their fetch lands.
that's pretty funny.
Um,
Somebody untap, upkeep, lose one life, pass the turn.
yeah, yeah. So
No, lose one life, give you a land past
Oh,
the turn.
yeah,
yeah, it's true.
yeah. So that's pretty funny. Like if you're in a play group that has a lot of fetch lands, if you're gonna consistent like if you're always gonna have a green player at your table, like there was a long period of time where like Steven like just would not play green. So he would have the rampant growths and the cultivates and the Kodama's reaches. Like then, opposition agent is like fairly consistently going to do anything. But like we don't run a ton of combos in our play group, and when we do, we're mostly playing them fairly. Like we're not like running tutors to get the combo more consistently per se. We're just like gonna hope we draw into the combo for the most part. So then,
And I mean,
yeah. So I
honestly,
think in our play group it's pretty mid,
we're the type
but there
of
are play groups
guys.
where it's good.
We're the type of guys that when we're tutoring for like Soul Ring. Like, I've done that
Yeah, like our
several
Urza
times.
Saga goes off. Our Urza Saga pops, and we're gonna go get our Soul Ring or our Expedition map or something. Like
Or
that
like,
kind of stuff.
or like we
Uber
get,
specific.
or like we'll go get like the Rhystic Study. Something that's gonna draw us into something really powerful, or
Or it's stuff you just don't want to stop. Like there have been times where it's like, oh, I drew my demonic tutor and we're all about to die. Guess I'm gonna go find a board wipe. No one's gonna stop me.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
they all want the same thing. So yeah, I don't know. I like opposition agent, but I do find that it is incredibly meta dependent.
Yeah.
All right. So my first card that I really like and don't really play is Shadrix Silverquill. This is a card that we've actually seen commander decks around it on our show before. We played it on, well, I played it on the episode of Upkeep last summer where we all played Steven's decks. I played this deck. He played it on the $100 budget episode earlier this season. And then, spoiler alert, it's the deck that Steven's bringing back for Revenge Week. We just filmed that a couple weeks ago. Um, but it is for 3 white black Elder Dragon 2/5 with flying and double strike. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. Target player creates a 2/1 Inkling with flying. Target player draws a card and loses a life. Target player puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature they control. I really like this card. I like political cards. I've said many a times that if I'm going to play Commander, I'm going to lean into the fact that it's Commander. The stuff that's like uber, like super political, making deals with people, stuff like that. Really take advantage of the fact that this is a multiplayer format. And Shakespeare Silverquill does that pretty well in the fact that it's all the modes are kind of decent. And then depending on the way that your deck is leaning, maybe some modes are better for you, some modes are better for other people. And you can really use it to make deals with people, but you're basically always going to skew it in a way that's going to help you more than it's going to help whoever you're giving the other mode to, which is pretty cool. And also, if I don't know if you would ever want to do this, but you don't have to choose yourself for the modes. You can also just give both modes to one of your opponents. I don't know why you would do that, but you theoretically could do that. I did used to have this deck in my group hug deck.
You can't give both modes to one opponent.
Right.
You still have to give it to.
Right. But I'm saying like,
the way you phrase
you
that,
you usually put one for you, one for your opponents, but you
Right.
could go opponent, opponent, and not give yourself a mode. I don't know if there's ever a reason you would do that, but you could do that.
The way you phrased it made me think that you were like, you can give both modes to one opponent. I was like, wait, no, you can't.
No. I did used to have this in my group hug deck. But the curve on that deck is pretty low. And this was just like an awkward 5-mana creature that didn't come down half the time. And I just needed to make room for cards that were more efficient and more group huggy than this card. So it ended up getting cut. So now I have the showcase version of it, which is beautiful. I think all of the Elder Dragons from Strixhaven, their showcases are gorgeous. And I just have this thing in a binder, and I don't really have a home for it, which is kind of sad.
I think it's really cool. I like the colors. Orzhov is definitely it's up my alley.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about it, I wish that instead of triggering on like at the beginning of combat, I wish it triggered on attack. Because then if it triggered on attack, it could go into something like an Ishin deck and be
that's a good point.
And be really powerful. There's just you make it an attack trigger, but I guess if you make it an attack trigger, it could potentially get too broken. I don't know what potential combos are out there that would make it really strong, but that's kind of one of the things that's always that's just not drawn me to it. Because I also like the idea of getting tricky with who gets what when you attack. Like, I'm attacking this player, but I make a deal with them and they get stuff when creatures die, so I'm going to give them the Inkling so that they can block with it. You could just do weird stuff like that if it had the trigger on attack instead of at the beginning of combat. So that's one of the big things for me that's always kind of not made me interested in this card. But every time that I've played against it, even not on the channel, it's always been fun because you're always, going to combat like, can I have a card, please?
Is
Yeah,
me?
Please?
that's true. Yeah, it is funny. We all just like annoy the crap out of Steven whenever he pulls this deck out.
Can I
We're
has
like,
can I
choose me,
has can
please.
I has a card, please?
I This was actually the first deck I built on Magic Online. The first deck I built on Magic Online was a Shadrix Silverquill Voltron deck. Dude, it's so spicy. It's so spicy. Uh,
In these
I
colors?
actually like,
Ooh.
yeah, yeah. I
Ooh.
actually like that it's well, the double strike is so good in black because I have tainted strike in the deck. So you just get in a good attack and someone's gone. Uh, but
Put a couple of swords on that bad boy.
yeah, yeah. Honestly, the deck's pretty good.
Dude,
Uh,
oh my gosh. I mean, nothing. Now I'm just thinking about crazy double strike stuff.
yes, yeah. Yeah. I have like some of the swords are in there. There's life link, so you're getting a crap ton of life, stuff like that. So yeah, it's a really fun deck.
Thank
Um,
thank God it's only a 2/5.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a second to grow them. I actually like that it's at the beginning of combat that it triggers because then it doesn't have haste. So at least at the beginning of combat, you still get to choose even if you don't get to attack with it right away, which even feels good if like by the time it comes back around to you, someone board wipes or removes it or something like that. So at least you should get some value out of it probably before it gets removed. So I kind of like it. Preston, why don't you walk us through your number 2 card?
All right. Next up, I have Thief of Sanity. It's one blue and a black, 2/2 flyer creature specter. Whenever Thief of Sanity deals combat damage to a player, you look at the top three cards of that player's library, exile one face down, then put the rest into the graveyard, and you can cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. So I actually do technically play this card on Arena, but I only play Arena like for 2 to 3 days every 3 to 4 months. So I'd really like to have this card come up in Commander. I just haven't found a deck to really put it in yet. But whenever I do play it on Arena, it's probably my favorite non-legendary card in all of Magic, or it's pretty close to it. It's just so much fun to do that effect, especially if you can like clone it, get multiple copies out, just anything like that. It gets pretty spicy pretty quick.
So
Yeah,
what the arena deck that you play this in, what's the goal of the deck? Is it really just built around this, or is there something specific you're doing with that deck that this just feeds into the plan?
It's a kind of a lot of a couple of those sort of steel effect things. Not fully doing that, but just keeping enough creatures on the battlefield to keep yourself safe, potentially milling them out, have a big creature like Nadir Kraken, the one who makes a
Yeah,
1/1 every turn if you pay one
yeah.
when you draw cards. So, and some planeswalkers. So, just Dimir good stuff, kind of. It's a really fun deck. Annoying to play against, but it's pretty fun to play.
I like this card. I
it's a good card. Seems really good.
what so
Uh,
what's kept you from playing it in Commander? Is it just too slow?
Well,
Or
right now I only have one specific Dimir deck, and that's what's the name?
Geigen?
Garuda.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the actual magic name for people. And that deck's whole thing is even converted mana cost. So the fact this one is three, I can't hit it off Garuda's effect, so
Mm.
it would just hit the graveyard. And in Commander, it's not the strongest effect if you just have the one. You kind of want multiple copies to really do anything, so I need some clone effects if I want to make it happen. And my Garuda deck doesn't really have a lot of clones.
I mean, I would disagree with that because it's not like you have to get rid of cards as you exile new cards. Like if it was like a Mimic Vat or something, Mimic Vat gets played a ton in Commander. Um, I think that this is a very playable card in Commander. I do agree that probably
Yeah.
not in Gyruda. Um, but I like it. The more and more that I look at it, I'm like, man, 3 mana? Steal
I
something.
love this card.
It's a
It's so
flyer,
fun.
so it's got evasion. And if you got double strike, then you get that twice. Yeah, that's good. I might start putting this in decks that can have it just cause.
I've thought about playing it in
And
Commander before. I haven't quite found a home for it either.
what's also really nice about it is like even if it goes away, you can still play those cards.
Yeah.
Fun fact, the very first Geek and Seek video is me and Preston talking about early previews for Guilds of Ravnica,
Huh.
which is where this card comes from.
Interesting.
So it's kind of fun that lined up that way.
It's come full circle.
Yeah, it has. Jason, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about your number 2 card that you really like but don't play that much, if at all.
All right. I love this card just because I love these types of effects, but I've never been able to find a spot for it. It's Enchanted Evening. All permanents are enchantments in addition to their other types. That's it. There's so much value you could get off that just from enchantments entering the battlefield. I mean, there's just so much fun that you can have with this card. But I don't really have any enchantment decks that it goes in, because the only real deck that I have that cares about enchantments is Miracle.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have blue in it. It's not in the color, so I can't play it. And then I've thought, do I just build an Azorius like enchantments deck, or do I build like a 3-color enchantments deck, put this in it, and do I build a Go Shintai deck and mess with the shrines and stuff like that? But I've never got around to doing any of it. But I really, really, really like this card.
So there's definitely, well, first of all, the art's really sick. And then I was like, oh, it's
sick, isn't it?
And then I was like, oh, it's Rebecca Gay, duh. Like one of the all-stars of Magic the Gathering art. So first of all, you should be able to play it in Miracle. The reason you can't is because the color rules are dumb in Magic. Like the fact, because you can just use the white mana pips and you have white in the deck. So based on just being able to cast it, like we talked about this in an episode of the podcast like over a year ago or something. But I hate how hybrid mana works in Commander. Like the fact that you can't play this in just any white deck that can cast it is kind of annoying. Like I wish it's too bad that you have to be white blue specifically,
or at least have those colors.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's too bad because there are probably pretty cool things you can do with it. My thing though is I see all of the downsides that happen with this card. You play this, right? And someone like Bane of Progress.
Dude, they wouldn't. That's the thing. People wouldn't do that. Because now it's like, okay, it's okay.
It would blow up everything.
Do I let them keep their crazy enchantment combo and win the game and move on to the next game? Or do I destroy everything and start this game all the way over?
Including Bane of Progress.
Well, yeah, but like there are people in our play group who we have petty people in our play group who they want you to fight hard for your win. And if they have a way to board wipe, like we found this out on several episodes. The reason that we've had several, I know it doesn't look like it for you guys after editing, but several episodes of Upkeep lately have been like 2.5 hours long. And that's because people are like, I see the writing on the wall. I know my doom is inevitable, but I have a board wipe in hand and I will cast it by God.
Is me.
That's just how we play.
I'm not
going
to blow up lands.
See, that's the thing.
Okay.
Well, as long as you're not playing Avacyn, you won't.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Well, that deck's fun though.
I don't know. I just see all the ways it can go wrong. Or someone might not realize it because like so many things like this say like non-land permanents. So someone might even cast the board wipe not even realizing that they're about to blow up all the lands too, and then they'll be like, oh God,
well,
have
that's
mercy on
funny,
my soul.
See,
yeah, that would be kind of funny.
That's that person's fault because you know what reading the card does?
It explains the card except when it doesn't.
It explains the card.
Yeah. It is a pretty cool card. I feel like, I don't know. There's definitely a lot of cool things you can do with it.
in a green, white, blue Enchantress deck.
Hmm.
That's good.
Hmm. Yeah. I think blue is a cool color for enchantments. Like I've almost built oh, I can't think of what it's called. It's the Sultai enchantment commander from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, the one that like has the toad.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
It
yeah.
makes the
Toad
toad.
Rider.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
black and 2 to cast, and then it's got a hybrid Simic in its act.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I've almost built that deck so many
I
times.
can't think of the name of it,
And
but it'll be up on screen.
yeah, there's a lot of cool things with blue enchantments, so it's cool.
Omnipotence.
There's a lot of
Side note.
everyone's favorite card, Ristic Study.
Yes, sir.
All right, my number two card that I really like but don't really play is Fumigate. This is for 3 white white. It's a sorcery that says destroy all creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. Part of it is nostalgia, if I'm being honest. Like Kaladesh was pretty early on into playing Magic. Like at this point, I had been playing Magic for like less than a year still. So part of it's nostalgia. Like I remember I had a Boros aggro standard deck and I had a couple fumigates in my sideboard. Um and so that's part of it. But even then, like I remember we all had an affinity for life gain just in general when we got into Magic. Like I mean Preston's first commander deck is Trostani, right? But all of us were kind of like that. Both Steven and I, when we first learned about the modern format and we didn't understand the meta or what you're supposed to do or anything like that, we tried building life gain modern decks, which was really funny because that's just not a thing. You can't do that. But like we just really liked this card. And for a while, this was one of those like white go-to board wipes for me. And I like it because even though I think life gain is kind of goofy. Like it doesn't matter that much. But like if your deck has at least a couple cards that will just incidentally gain you a little bit of life, that might just be like all you need to stay in the game a little bit longer and maybe scratch out your win. So life gain I think is maybe it's better than some people think that life gain is, but it still just doesn't really make the cut for me anymore. Just because I'm only running, depending on my deck, I'm running maybe on average 4 board wipes, maybe a couple less, couple more, depending on the deck. Let's say averaging 4. But I really like, we talked about this in the board wipe episode. I really like the flexible board wipes, the austere commands and the farewells, or the stuff that's just going to clear the way so you can win the game, like the ruinous ultimatums or the cyclonic rifts. I like a lot of that stuff. So then it's when you get to the 5 mana, all you can get rid of is creatures, and it's not even going to touch the indestructible ones. Ah, I just don't really play this card, even though I feel like it's probably playable. Just it's perfectly playable. So when you factor in all of the like get rid of everything, or the flexible board wipes, or the one-sided board wipes, you just run out. Like I'm not going to run 10 board wipes in my deck. So then I just end up not playing Fumigate, even though I actually think it's pretty playable.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I look at this card and I see, okay, it's a Day of Judgment, but for 1 more mana, I gain life equal to how many creatures got blown up. It's like, okay, would I pay 1 mana to gain 3 life? Probably. I doubt you'd use it. I doubt you'd use a Day of Judgment or something like this to destroy 3 creatures. So let's say minimum you're destroying 5 creatures. Would I pay 1 mana to gain 5 life?
That's a
Yeah.
card.
Yeah, I would do that. I would do that for sure. Now you start thinking about really big board states in this game, in this format, where you have 4 players at the table. Let's say each player has 4 creatures. That's 12 creatures on the battlefield. Now you're saying, would you pay 1 mana to gain 12 life? Yes, every single time I would do that. So I think that this card is a lot better than maybe you're thinking it is. And this is something that I think should get run more than certain other board wipes. Like if you're running a Day of Judgment, or if you're running a Wrath of God, I think you take that out and you replace it with this, because I think this is going to give you. I think this is going to give you more value than either one of those cards.
This is also cheaper than either of those cards. It's only like 50 cents. I will
There's one's going for
before
20
I
cents.
Nice. Before I throw it over to Preston to get his opinion on this, I will say that if I am ever going to play Fumigate again, it's either going to be in a go wide deck where all my creatures are really, really puny. So eventually it gets to the point where I have to deal with all my opponent's really scary things, even though I'm going to lose all my tiny things. But then because I have so many things, I'm just going to gain absurd amounts of life. So either in a deck like that or in an actual life gain deck. So those are the two situations where I could see myself maybe playing it again. But Preston, what do you think about this card?
Life gain is the third most powerful you can do in a game of Magic. So a board wipe that gains you life is insane. I think you are a bad Magic player and a bad person.
So you
Oh.
think that all of the things I said in our board wipe episode were wrong? You think I shouldn't be playing the one-sided board wipes and the flexible board wipes?
No, I think you should play those and this.
So you think I should have 10 board wipes in my deck?
Yes.
Why don't we just play more targeted removal instead?
I agree. That's the better solution.
Why not both?
Yeah,
So
now
you're
you
saying
spit.
10 board wipes and 10 pieces of targeted removal, 15 pieces of targeted removal?
That might be a little light, but it's a start.
Jason, just cut more lands. It'll be fine.
You're right.
Preston, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about your number one card on our list today?
All right, my final card is Sunbird's Invocation for 5 and a red. It's an enchantment, and it says whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's mana value. You may cast a spell with mana value X or less from among cards revealed this way without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So I really love this card, and I've wanted it in decks for basically the entire time it's existed. But the problem is, of all the decks I have, it's either my mono red deck that would have it, which is my goblins deck, where this wouldn't be that good because most of my stuff is pretty cheap, and I don't really want a 6 cost enchantment because that's just a lot of mana for what the deck's trying to do and what the card achieves. And then for all my other decks, it just is one of the cards I end up cutting because there are so many options when you have more than one color. So it never ends up making the cut for me, even though I really love it.
This card is really sweet. Didn't you used to have it in a deck? I feel like I've seen you play it before, at least.
I I think I had it in my dinosaur deck at one point, like the earliest version of it. And then I think I have had it in the goblin deck, and it just never really did anything in that.
It is from original Ixalan.
I'm basically on the exact same page with you on this card, Preston. Whenever I'm building a deck, especially if it's stuff that, like, if it's a bit of a higher curve, I'll always look at this card and I'll be like, I'm going to get a lot of value out of this. Um, but it's always just a card that I end up cutting, like, first, or it's just one of the first cuts. I do actually think that it could be better in your goblin deck than you're thinking, because I know there's a goblin that lets you search your library for like any number of goblins, and then you put them on top of your library in any order. So with Sunbird's Invocation, you could stack it so that, you know, you're drawing goblins, and then when you play it from your hand, you play one from the top of your library, and you know,
Well, you could do that, yeah.
I think that you definitely have to. It gets a little bit more like tricky and technical, and you definitely would have to be stacking them in the right order. So there's a lot
That's
more.
too much thinking for the goblin
That's
deck.
kind of what I was thinking. There's a lot of thought for goblins. But yeah, I mean, it's a really powerful effect. Especially if you're in a deck where you're manipulating the top of your library, that could be, you know.
Mm.
But I don't think that it's, especially for 6 mana. I just don't think that it's as playable these days. I've definitely played it before and definitely would put it into decks, and it almost becomes, you know, do I play this card because it's good and I have fun playing it, or do I cut it and add in something that's a bit more optimal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about it. It's definitely got a cool factor, but it's kind of the win more kind of mentality that I've kind of leaned away from the longer I've played Commander. Like if I'm going to spend 6 mana on a card, I'd rather pay 6 mana and get something that's immediately going to give me value. It's immediately going to draw me cards or contribute to the board in a meaningful way. This is 6 mana, do nothing, and then you have to follow it up with something else. I mean, it's an extra free spell every turn, which is kind of nice. So I will say that there are homes for this, I think. Like if you're playing like a big mana deck, like a Maelstrom Wanderer or something where you're just going to end up with absurd amounts of cards, and then maybe you have some cards that have payoffs for playing cards that are uh not from your hand, stuff like that, because it's going to right because it plays them from the top of your deck.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, so
you cast a spell and then you reveal cards from the top where, however much mana that spell was. And then you cast a spell with this like the same mana value or less from among those cards, and then the rest go on the bottom.
yeah. Well, all that to say is I think there are decks where it's perfectly playable, but it's kind of slow by today's standards. I'd rather spend my 6 mana on something that's a little bit more immediate impact. Is all.
It's got a bit more
It is
meat,
cool though.
something that's got a bit more meat on its bones.
Yeah.
Not something that I have to feed.
Yeah.
When you have Cascade and Discover, this just feels a lot worse in comparison.
That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
That's true. All right. Jason, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about your favorite card that you don't really play?
All right, well, the number one card that I picked for this was Mirror Entity. This is a 1/1 with Changeling. It's a 1/1 Changeling, and you could basically make every other creature you have a Changeling. What I've always wanted to do is build like the ultimate typal deck and just have all the like creature lords, like just make it a 5-color. I mean, obviously you could do Morophon. That's the obvious one that you. But I don't want to do that. Like that just seems too basic. I would want Mirror Entity to be kind of like the hidden commander in the deck. So because I always just like the thought of, playing like a 2/2 zombie lord, playing a 1/1 elf lord, playing like all these other like other certain type creature type gets +1/+1, and then paying 0 mana into Mirror Entity's ability, because you can do that. You can do that where X is equal to 0, and it says until end of turn, creatures you control have base power and toughness 0/0 and gain all creature types. Your creatures aren't going to die because you have all these lords out and they gain all the creature types. So now they're all getting like +5/+5, +8/+8 or whatever. And there's just some really fun stuff that you can do with it. But outside of that, I just don't see a whole lot of spots for this card to go. And it's got a really, really cool and interesting ability to it. Even for something like, oh man, I can't think of the name of it, but what's the board wipe that, you can either kill all dragons or kill all non-dragons?
Crux of Fate.
Yeah, so if somebody says kill all dragons, well, I guess, I don't know. No, that's not a good example. Kill all non-dragons, and then you make your creatures dragons.
Yeah.
And then you save them. Or like there's the one, I think it's a creature, I think it's an adventure actually. Where it enters this is destroy all non-giants.
Yeah, that's an adventure.
Yeah,
There's a couple effects that do stuff like that.
Realm Cloak Giant.
you make pay 0 or you pay 1 into it. Now all your creatures have base power and toughness 1/1, and they are giants now, so they're fine. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of cool stuff. It's a really cool card. I think it's a really, really good card. I can't. There's not a whole lot of spots for me to put it in.
If you don't mind cutting out blue and black, you can do that creature tutor commander that's Naya. Search him out early and just do all the Naya creature lords.
Wait, you talking about Rocco?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rocco. I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So you reminded me of I just sent it to our group chat, but Tomer from MTG Goldfish has a Changelings deck where Dragon's the commander, and then he just plays a bunch of changelings and then a bunch of lords. And I don't know if he has Mirror Entity in the deck or not, but it's a pretty fun deck. It's kind of like what you were just describing, where you just play. It's I think he calls it tribal. I think is what he used to call the deck.
Tribal. That's a perfect name for it.
Yeah, so it's pretty fun. There is one part of this card that I think you're overlooking, and I think it makes it. I don't know if I even have this in a deck right now, but there is one part about this card that I think makes it better than you're giving it credit for, and it's the fact that you're changing the power and toughness of your creatures. Because yeah, I mean the creature type is like not insignificant. That obviously is beneficial for certain decks. But the fact that you could have like a bunch of really small creatures, and then you get to the late game, you drop this, you pump a bunch of mana into it, and now all of your creatures are like 7/7s or something like that. That's insane. Like
if you're
that will end the game.
if it's in the right deck, there's 7/7s that now get like +8/+8 because they're every creature type or something to that effect.
Oh, well, sure. Yeah, if you're in like a typal deck and you have some kind of lord effect, then yeah, sure.
But
Even if you're not in a typal deck,
if you had
like even if you're just playing
tokens,
yeah, like if you just have a bunch of 1/1s or a bunch of 2/2s or something like that, and you pump a bunch of mana into this, and now your giant army of puny guys is now a giant army of thickums, and that could end games pretty quick.
I mean, that's
So
almost.
I think that makes it a little bit more playable than you might be giving it credit for.
This almost could be like a white version of like an overwhelming stampede type of effect. I know it doesn't give anything trample, but I mean, making all your really small creatures really big at instant speed too. Like that's another thing. You can do this. You can do this and respond to somebody attacking you and make your creatures way bigger just at an instant. And now you can block and kill some of your opponent's creatures when they thought they had the advantage when they were attacking you.
Right.
Like I was saying, it's a really, really interesting card, and I just wish that I could find more spots for it to go.
Maybe I should put it in my human deck.
I
Actually,
think
might
that
be
it
kind of good.
absolutely should be in your human deck. I honestly think that it's one card that probably could go into any typal deck that has white in it. Like maybe not perfectly, maybe it won't perfectly slot into every single deck, but I think it will perfectly slot into a couple. I think that there's a few that once you put it in there and you play with it a few times, you're like, wow, this card actually is really powerful.
We figured it out. I'm going to cut opposition agent and add mirror entity. All right, we figured it out.
Interesting. There we go.
All right. So, last card for the day. This is my top pick for a card I really like and don't play. This is the Celestus. This is for 3 colorless mana, a legendary artifact. If it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as it enters the battlefield. I bet you guys can already tell why I don't play this card. It taps to add 1 mana of any color. You can pay 3 and tap it. If it's night, it becomes day. Otherwise, it becomes night. Activate only as a sorcery. Then whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you gain a life. You may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. I've tried putting this in a couple decks. I've tried putting it in my Quasar deck just because it's a 3-color deck, doesn't have green, so I'm a little bit more willing to play the 3 mana rocks, especially because this is one that will sometimes gain me a little bit of life and sometimes let me do a little bit of card draw, which the deck wants to do those 2 things. So I tried playing it there. I also tried playing it in my Reanimator deck. So the looting is now letting me dump big scary monsters into my graveyard to reanimate later. It also doesn't have green, so this is also, again, I'm slightly more willing to spend 3 mana on a mana rock because I don't have green. So I've tried playing this card before, and it's awesome. But god dang it, man, I do not want to track day night.
It's so annoying.
It's so hard to track in paper.
It's so annoying. And I'll tell you this, I used to have my Tovolar deck. Steven has a Tovolar deck. We'll be the first ones to tell you, keep a track of day night. It ain't no joke, man. It's so tedious, and you find yourself so many times going like, oh wait, it's actually day here, which means this was supposed to happen. Which okay, we're good now. We're good. It's so annoying. Another thing that I would say about this card is it doesn't necessarily provide you card advantage.
It's card selection.
It's card selection. That's the thing. Like, you're not up one card over your opponents. That's the thing I feel like a lot of people get confused about is if you're looting or if you're rummaging, that's not like you drew a card, but you didn't really draw a card. You just replaced a card that you had in your hand. Um so and especially on cards like this, where it says you have to discard a card to draw. You're essentially kind of trading two cards for one card. And
it is optional though. Like if you like your hand, you will gain the life. That's not a May ability. You will gain the life, which like I said earlier, I do like a little bit of incidental life gain here and there in my decks. But then the looting part is optional.
that's
You
what I
don't
think makes
have to
this
do the loot.
better than other, types of stuff like that is the fact that it is an option. You don't have to do it. But chances are, I think if you are reduced to playing this artifact, I would strongly think that you are kind of relying on that card draw or that
So
selection, I should say.
yeah, but there's also I don't even know as if I think looting and rummaging I think is great in Commander. I'd rather
Oh,
have
it's advantage. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to say that like you don't have an advantage by doing it. Yes, you're being able to look at more cards, and you have more options. You don't have like an actual advantage over your opponents. It's not like you started out with 5 cards and now you have 6 cards and everybody else has
well
five
sure.
cards. It just
But you're keeping that best five. You're ditching the one card that's not very helpful to you.
exactly.
And then like I said, like I tried putting this in my reanimator deck. So then I want things in my graveyard. So then it's like double helping. And then the other deck was my Quasar deck. And then I in that deck I have cards like like Teferi's Ageless Insight or Elhemerit's Archive. So I'm actually drawing two cards and then only discarding one. So then I am still up the cards. Um,
Or even if you have to discard, you're getting some additional bonus whenever you draw a card, whether that's dealing damage to other
yeah,
opponents.
Quasar's triggering or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any notes on this, Preston?
Yeah, I think it's a technically good card. I've never been a fan of the whole looting slash rummaging mechanics. I've always disliked those sort of card draw effects personally. I don't like them myself. So one that makes me also have to keep track of night and day, not interested.
See the
I think
difference
it's a good
though
card.
the
Just
difference
personally,
though
I'd never want to do it.
was something I think that you should consider as far maybe not like for yourself, but I think that this is a better card than what you're giving it credit for because it's colorless. Like, yeah, in certain colors, there are definitely better draw spell options than, the loot rummaging type effects. But for this to be on a colorless card that can go into just about any deck, and, you're someone who's talking about budget and price often enough, I think that I think it's a little bit better than what you might be giving it credit for. While I'm right there with you, Morgan. I don't really play it that much.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's a bad card. I'm just not interested.
Have you ever played a graveyard deck, Preston?
Yeah,
Like an like
I've
like
played.
not like a sacrifice deck. I know you've played those, but like an actual like I need certain things in my graveyard. So then these like rummaging and looting effects are actually pretty good.
Um, I've never done one with rummaging and looting effects
Okay.
specifically, but like my Demir decks have graveyard recursion and stuff
Well,
usually.
sure. Yeah.
But
But like I like this card, when I have anger in my hand or when I have wonder in my hand. Now I can
Yeah.
discard. Boom! All my creatures have haste or all my creatures have flying.
Yeah. I also like I said, I actually think it's just good. Just it's 3 mana rock
And it doesn't come in
that will
tapped.
sometimes right. Yeah. And it taps for any color. And like you said, it's colorless, so it can go in any deck. And then it's just occasionally gonna gain you a little bit of life, which is nice. It's occasionally gonna give you a little bit of card selection, which is nice. So if day night wasn't so hard to track in paper, I would play it at least in those two decks I mentioned. Maybe I would play it in more decks than just that. But it's just I've even had it in the decks and then cut it because I got tired of tracking it. Like I have so much My mental capacity is focused on other things. I have other things on my board I need to track. I have things on my opponent's boards I need to track. I don't also want to have to track how many, like exactly how many spells people are playing or not playing to keep track of data. It's too much extra work.
We
So-
got to play online more.
I know. Yeah, I would play this like if we were playing on Magic Online more often. I would do this. We've talked about like maybe this summer bringing a Magic Online monthly Magic Online show on. If we do that, maybe I'll play the Celestus more often. Who knows? Okay. Well, that is our favorite cards that we like, but don't really play for one reason or another. So if you guys have cards that fit that description, cards you really like, but don't really play much for one reason or another, let us know in the comments. Seriously, leaving comments is the best thing you can do to help support the show. So we would really appreciate it. We're not even up to the hour yet. So if we have a second, does anyone have something cool outside of the world of Magic going on in your life, or just something fun that is happening that you want to call out? I'll say something though. My band Tundra, we're like a metal band. We finished recording our album like 2 years ago, and then for a lot of reasons, it hasn't come out yet. But we finally have some traction. We finally have someone who's mixing the record. We have it lined up to get mastered. We have a little bit of a timeline going, so it's very exciting. But if you guys would like to contribute to that, check out our socials. We'll have them linked in the description of the video. We're doing in one of our new songs, we're going to have this big like choir effect, and we want to get like our fans and stuff to be a part of that song. So if you want to be in a choir in one of our songs, go check out our socials and you'll find links on how to be a part of that. So if that sounds interesting to you, do that. It would be fun to get some of the Geek and Seek people involved in that as well. Alrighty. That is going to be all for this episode of the Geek and Speak podcast. Not sure what we're talking about next week, but tune in next week. We will have something else fun to talk about. Thank you, Preston and Jason, for joining me today to talk about some really cool cards. And let us know if you guys play any of these cards in the comments, or if you have other cards that you really like but don't really play for one reason or another. And we will see you guys next time. Bye.